Today's daf we're going to learn is Bava Metzia daf Tevav. Today's daf is sponsored by Barbara Goldschlag in honor of the engagement of Eliza Goldschlag and Sam Clark. Mazal tov. Okay, we're going to get started with a review of yesterday's daf. Maybe I'll pull up the study guide right now and we'll just follow inside the study guide very briefly. We started with a big machloket, basic machloket Rav and Shmuel, which we're going to continue today. And we're going to see another parallel machloket they had. If someone sells a stolen field. So we're going to go back to Ruth and Naomi and Yael. Ruth stole a field from Yael, sold it to Naomi. So now Yael comes, takes the field away from Naomi, but Naomi had already invested in the field. So the question is, when Ruth gave a guarantee to Naomi for this field, now normally she would give a guarantee, not only for the field, but even for the enhancement she makes. The problem is, so Rav says, yes, she gets back her money, Naomi, and she gets back the enhancements that she did to the field. Shmuel says if you do that, and Rav Nachman explained, Shmuel is saying, you're going to have a problem because it's going to look like rebeat, because in the end, there was no land to show for it. It's as if, right, we're going to say it's as if what happened here, Naomi gave $100 to Ruth, to Ruth, and Ruth returned 120, and that's going to look like interest. So Shmuel says you can't return the sheva. So if it were a parallel case where Ruth sold land she owned actually to Naomi, but Ruth had a loan out, and when Yael came to collect her loan, she took Naomi's land with the sheva. Naomi would be able to get the sheva back because there was land. So Ruth gave her land and she got back some extra money. That makes it clear it's not right that she paid the $100 that she got worth for land. And therefore, when she gets 120 back, it's very obvious. But when the land gets erased, kind of thing, as if there really was no land, we can't say that. Then we brought a difficulty with Shmuel. We resolved it. Then we brought a second difficulty with Shmuel, and we're going to start back with there because we have one response, a resolution to the difficulty, but now we're going to have two other responses. So let's start from the end of Yudalet Amud Bet, where we have this source. It says, so this is the case where we say, in terms of peyrot, fruits, produce, you can't collect peyrot from lien property. So now they want to know, that was the Mishnah in Gittin, what's the case? And that's because, right, no one's ever going to buy land if they know that, peyrot could be an endless, we don't know how much it could ever be. They would never want to buy land. So now they say, what would be the case of achila peyrot? Kigon, I'm about 10 lines from the bottom of Yudalet Amud Bet. So someone stole a field, someone collected the field. So he stole a field and then the person collected the field. It sounds like there's two people. So now when he goes to collect, now we don't know who's collecting what. So now we want to say, basically, this can't possibly be just that Ruth and Yael are in the picture, because Yael took back all the land. So she has the keren and she has the peyrot. So who's collecting keren and peyrot? It must be there's a third party of Naomi, that Ruth had sold it to Naomi. When Yael took back her land, she took the peyrot and the land from Naomi, and Naomi is now going to Ruth to collect, and she gets the sheva. And there you see, it goes against Shmuel. To which we're going to have three answers. And in fact, I'll pull up the chart. It'll help you see the three answers here because I put them in a chart, okay? Besides, I put the three answers here. We'll chart it out. And you'll see the differences between them. So Rava says, what's the case? I'm not going to read this inside. I'll just show you here. Rava says the first answer is, it's just two people. Really it is. But then what we say? Yael can't. And then, by the way, as soon as it's two people, there is no Naomi in the picture, and obviously then it's not related. The whole problem is it sounds like the way we thought the Braita meant, that Naomi collects the shevach back from Ruth. She gets her enhancements back, which would then look like rebeat, according to Shmuel. So basically, Rava had said, and this is where we ended, that the issue is, really it is Yael collecting the keren and the peyrot. What was the issue? Well, the peyrot, in other words, what happened? Ruth stole a field, and there was already produce in the field. Ruth ate the produce, so that's why Naomi has to collect produce. And I'm sorry, that's why Yael has to collect produce. And remember, what does she do? She collects produce only from, because that's metalton, that's movables, she can only collect it from money that is in Ruth's hands. But let's say she goes to collect the field and the field is ruined because Ruth dug up pits and all this other stuff. And therefore she collects, let's say 50% of the land is still there. 50% is gone. So when Yael goes to collect, the one who was stolen from, goes to collect the 50% that was left, that wasn't there, sorry, that's the Karen. She goes to collect that. If she goes to collect from Ruth and Ruth doesn't have the money, she can collect it from land that Ruth sold to Shimon, okay? There's some other person here, not Yomi, who Ruth sold land to that was stolen. No, it's other property that Ruth didn't have. That's nechasim mishuabadim, okay? And therefore, this has nothing to do with it. Now, here I charted out just because we're going to compare this. Who's collecting the money according to this, and from who? The person who was stolen from, Yael, is collecting from Ruth, the person who stole, both the Karen and the payroll. Option number 2, Rava bar Rav Huna Amar. There are 3 people, but it's not Ruth, Naomi, and Yael. Okay, it's not that Ruth sold the stolen property. It's that Ruth stole it, and then these thugs came, okay, Rashi says they're Gentile thugs, and seized the property. So they took the land away. And that's why what was our whole problem? Why is Yael collecting this land in money? Isn't she just going to take the field back? Right? So in the first case, we came up with, well, the field was ruined some. And that's what we're talking about. But in this case, there is no field because these thugs took away the field. And then, so now it's very obvious. Banigzal, again, it's going to be the same thing. Who's collecting it? Yael is collecting, the one who was stolen from is collecting from the thief, from Ruth. So if Ruth doesn't have the value of the land anymore in her property that she stole, right? She stole a field of, $100,000. She doesn't have $100,000 in her property. So she can go take it from land that Ruth might have sold to somebody else. So we're going to say that's a bit of a problem, but let's just keep it right now at that. And if there was produce in the field when Ruth stole the field, then she can collect that only from the chasim nechorin, only from property that's in Ruth's hand. Okay, those are the first 2 answers. So now the Gemara says, now before we get to the third answer, we're going to have a little bit of why didn't each one hold like the other? Now, they're going to all deal with these words in the beginning of it, harehi yotza mitachat yada, which we understood, right? That Yael took the property. So Rava lo amar Rava bar Rav Huna because harehi yotza mitachat yada bedina mashma. It sounds like it's talking about by law that she got the court to tell her this is the amount that you get. That makes sense with case number 1. Because we basically assess, right? She stole the field, ate the produce, and dug up the pits. So the court would then decide how much is the land value that she's owed. Rabba bar Rav Huna lo amar Rava because harei yotza mitachat yada be'ena mashma. They say, harei yotza mitachat yada sounds like the field is intact. Because harei yotza mitachat yada sounds like somebody took it, but it's exactly intact the way it was before. So therefore, they don't like the first answer that she dug up these pits, and therefore they give the other answer, which is it's intact, just somebody seized it. Now we get back to the third answer. Here Rav Ashi is going to have what I call the creative answer. Rav Ashi amar litzdadin katane. Each case, okay, we said govem the Karen from lien property and the payroll from bnei cholim, and we assume that it's the same person collecting the payroll and the field. But Rav Ashi is going to say it's different people, and that's why I charted it out in this way. Who's collecting what? Okay, so let's go back to the case of Ruth, Naomi, and Yael. It really is going to be that case, but we're going to be able to resolve it that it's not going to create a problem for Shmuel. Why? So Ruth stole the field. It already had a lot of produce in it. Then, before she sells it to Naomi, she eats all the produce. Achal et hapirot, umachar et hasadeh. And then she sells the field after she ate the payroll. So now what happens? Comes Yael, ba lokach ligbot keren. So now the lokach, okay, so Yael came, took the field from Naomi. So now Yael's got the field. And Naomi wants to get her money back. So now enter Naomi into the picture. She comes to get the Karen, she goes back to Ruth and she says, hey, Ruth, give me the land, the money back. And Ruth doesn't have the money, so she goes to Shimon that Ruth sold land to whenever. When the nigzal came, now there's a split. What was the whole problem? We didn't want a case where Naomi would be collecting the fruits from Ruth because that would be rebate. That's exactly what Shmuel says. So no problem. It's not her that's collecting the payroll. What did we say in the case? What happened? Ruth stole the field with the produce and she ate all the produce. So who's collecting the produce now? It's the thief. The one who was stolen from, Yael, is collecting from the thief the produce. And then that she collects only from Bnei Cholin because it was movable property. And then we don't have this problem because this is the nigzal from the Gaza. And if you notice, okay, and this is why the chart is important, even if your Hebrew's not the greatest, but you can see that the payroll, as long as we say the payroll is Yael collecting from Ruth, then we're fine. Because our whole problem was, how could we have a case where Naomi's collecting payroll? She doesn't get payroll. She doesn't get the shevach, anything she invested, because that will look like rebate. So as soon as we say it's the nigzal from the Gazlan, we're good. The first two had to come up with a creative way that the whole thing is the nigzal from the Gazlan. But Rav Ashi said, well, who's to say the Karen and the payroll are the same person collecting? Let's just split them. And then the Karen is Naomi, but the payroll is Ruth because Ruth ate the payroll before she even sold the land. And then we resolve that issue. Okay, now the Gemara is going to raise a separate problem, which is Bein l'Rava bar Rav Huna, milva al pehu, milva al pei no gove min nechasim mishobadim. Well, now we have a problem. According to Rava and Rava bar Rav Huna, how could there be a collection of the nigzal from the Gazlan? Okay, because both say that it's Yael is collecting from Ruth. Okay, if in both cases, who's collecting from liened property? This is just a side point. Who collects from liened property here? Okay, this is basically a classic case. I steal from you. You want to collect it back. If I don't have the money, according to both Rav and Rava bar Rav Huna, they can collect from liened property if I don't have the item there. That is totally not true. Why is that totally not true? Well, what do we say about liened property? Why does it work that you can collect from liened property? Because there's a document out there that says, let's go back to Ruth, Yael, and Naomi. So when Ruth sells land to Naomi, Naomi checks it out, says, do you owe any money, right? And finds out that Ruth owes money to Yael, and then knows the risks involved. So probably she'll negotiate a better price because there's risk involved of the land being taken away. She'll make sure that there's a chrayut, right? We had a whole thing. Is it assumed there's a chrayut? Is it not? That was the whole discussion we had. Get back to it at the very, very end today if we get to the very end of the daf. Anyway, that is the way liened property works. Now, if Naomi buys land from Ruth and then Ruth steals, or let's say Shimon, because in our case it was Shimon. Shimon bought land from Ruth, right? It's not the Naomi in our case. It's someone else. Someone buys land from Ruth, Shimon, and then Ruth steals, whether Ruth stole before or Ruth stole after. What, Shimon's supposed to know that Ruth stole land and owes money to Yael because she stole the land? Nobody knows at this point that Ruth stole. That's the whole thing. She stole it. Nobody knows. You can't possibly say that land is liened to that. So when Yael goes to collect from Ruth, how on earth could she collect from Nechasim B'Shua? There's no way. So, it must be it must be she was already convicted of being a thief. Once you're convicted, oh, and by the way, I didn't read this inside, but basically they compared it to an oral loan because there was no documenting this whole thing. But as soon as we say, oh, well, there was already a court ruling against Ruth, and then she sold property to Shimon, well, then it can be collected from Shimon. Okay, that is a different situation. That's when there was already a court ruling about it. And then when Shimon bought land from Ruth, he should have looked into it. Does Ruth owe any money? And should have found out that she owes money for the court ruling that she owed the money for the theft. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. Ihachi perot nami. If so, the produce also should be collected. If there was already a court-issued ruling, it shouldn't matter whether it was the Karen that she's collecting, right? That Yael is collecting the principal, or Yael is collecting the produce. Once there's a court ruling, all of that should be allowed to be collected from Shimon. So why do we distinguish and say, well, the fruits can only be collected from the non-lien property, from things in Ruth's possession, and only the principal amount can be collected from the Mishuabadin? To which we answer, an interesting answer, it must be the reason why we distinguish is because Ruth was already convicted of the principal, but she wasn't yet convicted of the produce. Right? Now, the Gemara says, well, my pascha, which is like, is that a thing that we distinguish in court? That if Yael goes to convict Ruth of stealing, what, first we're going to deal with the Karen and only later we're going to deal with the payroll? We're going to have two separate court cases over it? To which the Gemara answers, Stama de Milta kitava inish karna tava bereisha. Yeah, the truth is, first Yael is going to deal with the principal because that's the big amount. Then later, once she resolves that issue, she'll deal with the payroll. So it's possible to make that distinction. It's a weakness in their arguments for sure, and the answer is weak, but it is an answer. Now we're going to go to question number 3 on Shmuel. The first 2 questions on Shmuel were from Tanaitic sources. Now we're going to have a contradiction of Shmuel to something Shmuel says elsewhere. So again, Shmuel says, because it looks like we beat, if Ruth stole the land and then sold it to Naomi, and Naomi invested, and Yael took it back from Naomi, and Naomi wants to go to Ruth to get her investment back, she cannot, because then it looks like all she did was give Ruth money and take back more money, and it looks like interest. So now they're going to ask, what? Naomi, who bought land from a thief, doesn't get her shevach back? He was speaking to Rav Chinna bar Shilat, who was probably a scribe, and he said to him, when you do a contract, check, but you should check with the parties and write into the document, shufra, that it could be collected from the best of the land, shivcha, that I'm committing to give you back the sheva, and pere, and the fruits, the produce. Now, we have 2 options. What could this be talking about? We keep going back to these 2 options. Either you're guaranteeing it for in case I have a loan outstanding, or you're guaranteeing it if the land was stolen, right? So either Baal Chov mi le pere. Well, we're going to now see a different statement that Shmuel said, and that we're going to distinguish between produce and enhancements. So, right, you might think they're one and the same, but here they're saying they're not the same. V'hamar Shmuel. Now, if you're going to say it's a Baal Chov, why are you giving achrayut guarantee for payroll? Hamar Shmuel Baal Chov goveh sheva. Shmuel said that a Baal Chov can collect the shevach, which means that when Yael comes to take her loan that Ruth owed her, and she collects it from Naomi, she can collect the enhancements as well, which means if she can collect the enhancements, it means also that Naomi can go back and demand the enhancements from Ruth, right? The only time she can't is if there was no land, actually, because it looks like rebuke. But in the case where there really was land, it was a fair and square, Ruth owned the land, it's just that she also had a loan outstanding. So a Baal Chov can get the shevach according to Shmuel. But they infer from here, shevach in about payroll lo, but not the payroll. She can't demand the payroll, okay? The Baal Chov can't collect the payroll. And also, okay, we're going to get back to this whole issue of Shmuel. This is going to be our next topic. Since they mentioned it here, we're going to do a gufa, which is, let's talk about that. But right now, we're just going to accept it as a given that, according to Shmuel, a Baal Chov can collect shevach, but not payroll. So this guarantee that they're writing, the scribe is writing in, is in the event of theft, okay? Because in the event of payroll, there won't be payroll because the Baal Chov will never collect the payroll. The produce will be left with Naomi. They'll collect everything else, but return the produce. So, elalav b'lokech migazlam. Well, if it's not guaranteeing, if a creditor comes and collects, it must be guaranteeing it for if it was stolen property. And what do you see here? There's shevach. So Shmuel says there is no shevach. You can't give shevach. How can you guarantee shevach? If you pay it back, it'll look like interest. So we're now going to have 2 versions of what Rav Yosef says. Okay, I'll pull up the chart also. I charted this out so you could understand the structure well, which is we're going to have 2 versions of Rav Yosef's going to answer something. Abai is going to raise a difficulty against it, and then we're going to answer it. So the difficulty and the answer are the same according to both versions. It's just a matter of what did Rav Yosef actually say in each version. So, and now we're going to see that even though Shmuel says, if Naomi buys stolen property, she can't get her shevach back because it'll look like interest, Rav Yosef's going to suggest in each version two possible ways where you actually can avoid the rebate problem, the interest problem. You can avoid it looking like rebate. Rav Yosef, kegon sheyesh lo karka. Okay, meaning if Ruth has land, and when Naomi goes to collect her money back after, remember, Ruth sold her stolen field. Naomi then had to give the field back to somebody else after she invested in it. She had to give it back to Yael because Yael says, that's my land. Ruth stole it. What was she doing? Selling it to you. And then Naomi goes back to Ruth to get her money back from the sale. Now, there's two possibilities. Ruth could give her money back, which is what looks like rebate. But if Ruth has land and actually gives her land, then it's not a problem because it doesn't look like rebate. She gets land back plus some money for the enhancements. Okay, in that case, it could work. So Amarle Abai says, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Says, okay, this is a bit of a strange question. It's a whole other topic, but you can't lend a se'ah of wheat and get back a se'ah of wheat because it looks like interest, because the price could fluctuate. Okay, that's a chumrah by like another area that might look like interest. Okay, now he says, just because you have land won't allow you to do this anyway, as if you could say, the idea here is that if you had land, perhaps you could say that you're kind of paying back in the value of the land, and then it makes it look like you can avoid this just by having land. And here we're basically saying you can avoid this by having land. So they're basically saying, without getting into too much detail here, they're basically saying that this doesn't work to allow you to loan someone a se'ah of wheat and get back a se'ah of wheat without it looking like interest, just because you have land to kind of maybe connect it to. The idea of land would be like this, okay? And the se'ah, I'll try to explain it simply. If I loan you wheat and you give me back wheat and the price has fluctuated, so it'll look like rebate. But if I loan you wheat and you have land, it's as if because I know I can collect it back from land, it's as if I collected it in land. That's the idea here. It's as if. It's fictitious a little, but it's as if. Well, that doesn't work, okay? Because in the end, it's still wheat for wheat. And what they're saying here is it's still 100 for 120. Like you're still getting the rebate back, okay? Even if you're getting it in land. So therefore, he's going to say, that doesn't work for se'ah. Why would it work here? To which he answers a very interesting answer. And this is going to help us when we get to rebate, when we get to Ezu Neshech, the chapter in our Masechet about rebate. We're going to learn all about rebate. Rebate is really, what's interest? Interest is interest on loans. Now, was this a loan, our case? No, this was a sale. But it's a sale that looks like it's rebate. Sometimes in a sale, we're going to claim it looks like rebate. But in a sale, we're always going to be more lenient because the real interest is in a loan. So while we might be more strict on something like this se'ah, these chitim, even if you have land and it won't work, that's hatam halva'ah. That's because it's a loan, and a loan is the place where we're the most concerned for interest. Whereas here, hachazvine, this is a sale. A sale already doesn't look like it's interest because it was a sale. Now, the problem in this case was there was really no land, so it looks like a loan, but it wasn't really a loan. So because of that, this solution could be a good solution, even though we wouldn't be able to employ the solution in a loan case. And like I said, we're going to do the exact same thing for the second version. Some people say, Amar Rav Yosef, if they did a kinyan right away to show I'm taking responsibility for the sheva, if you do a kinyan right away, it's as if you paid the money up front. Now, rebate is not when you pay the money up front, right? The whole problem here is it looks like he got 100 and got back 120 later. But if he committed already at the beginning, the sheva, by doing an actual act of acquiring, right, which is just symbolic, like pick up a handkerchief, let's say, but it's as if it happened then, it's as if it was part of the deal from the beginning and it doesn't look like interest. So, that wouldn't resolve the rebate problem in the se'ah. And again, distinguishing in a loan, we could be much more lenient when, much more strict, but in a sale, we could be much more lenient because again, once it's a sale already, we don't really think it's going to be interest because interest, you don't do interest on sales. There is no such thing. Of course, sometimes we say it looks like interest, but we're going to be more lenient. Okay, goof. So that was the end. That was the 3 questions on Shmuel about this issue of Does it look like rebit if in the end the property was stolen and there really was no sale in the end anyway? Can she get back her shevach? And Rav had said, yes, she can. Shmuel had said, this looks like interest. Gufa. Now, because we mentioned this thing, I told you we go back to this. Amar Shmuel Baal Chov goveh shevach. So this means that when Yael, who was owed money by Ruth, goes to collect her loan from Ruth, Ruth doesn't have money. She goes to Naomi. She collects the land from Naomi, and she even gets, if Naomi enhanced the land, she's going to get the enhancements as well. This is a bit of a strange halacha because it seems like if you're a Baal Chov, you're going to win out and get more money, like we're assuming. And later we'll see that maybe this isn't true, but we're assuming that, let's say it was a loan for $100 and the land was worth $100. And the investment of Naomi now upped it to 125 or something, right? And then she's, the Baal Chov is going to walk out with an extra 25. Now, what's going to happen basically? Well, Naomi's going to go back to, according to what we said, because she takes away the shevach, Yael, Naomi can go to Ruth and demand the shevach. And that's what Shmuel was saying. Put in the document that you're committing to the shevach. And then we said, oh, right, could it be a Baal Chov? And then we said, couldn't, it must be Lokech. Anyway, that's the concept. So, Amar Rava, Teda, Shekach Kotev Lo Mocher Lo Lokech. And now we're going to actually prove it from the text of a document. Okay, and he says, this is going to sound a lot to you if you're familiar with the ketubah. The language is very similar, which makes sense. This is the way they wrote documents in those days. They use this certain, it's clearly a poetic kind of language, okay, even if you might not understand a word of it. So this is what he writes. Ana ekum ve'ashafe ve'adake ve'amarek zvini ilon. Okay, it's poetic because they keep saying a lot of words that really mean one and the same thing. Okay, I am going to establish and silence and clean, purify and cleanse this deal, meaning I'm going to make this deal perfect. I'm going to clarify everything, make it all in order, that I'm taking responsibility for inun, for the land, va'amalehon, any investment you put into the land, vishvachehon, and any enhancement that the property goes up in value. Okay, if someone takes it away from you, right, I will commit to you that I will replace all that money. Ve'ekum kadamach, and it will be then given to you. V'tzave, it's also a word we see in the ketubah, zavina dinan. Okay, tzave is I agree. Who's agreeing? Zavina dinan. Dinan, they also in the ketubah write the chatan dinan, which means this chatan. So here it means this seller, okay, which means myself, right? This seller agrees to all this, and I accept it upon myself. You see it's poetic because it keeps repeating it. The main point is they're committing to the sheva. So Amarle Rav. So basically, this is a warrant. This is a guarantee. I'm guaranteeing, right? Ruth is saying, I'm guaranteeing when I sell this to Naomi, I will give you back all the sheva. So there you have it. So that's Rava trying to prove, which Shmuel said, that a Baal Chov can obviously collect the shevach, and that's why if the Baal Chov collects the shevach, Naomi can get it back from Ruth. Amarle Rav Chia bar Avin l'Rava elamayata matana deloksi behachi achanami delo tarif shivcha. So wait, in a document, let's say Ruth, instead of selling the land to Naomi, gave it to her as a gift. Now, a gift document doesn't say anything about the sheva. So you're trying to say that if Naomi buys it, if Ruth sells it, there's a chrayut she'll give her back the sheva. But if she gives her a gift, she's not committing. What do you think? If she's giving her a gift, she likes her even more and she's going to commit to more? To which he says, Amala'im. No, you're right. In other words, the point is, if you're trying to prove it from the language of the document, well, the language of a gift doesn't say this. And obviously it must be if when you sell it, you're taking responsibility, all the more so when you're giving a gift, you're taking responsibility. And it's a problem. What you're saying, a gift, you won't have it because it doesn't say so. And he says, yeah, a gift doesn't have this, okay? If Ruth gave Naomi as a gift and Naomi enhanced the land, and then it got taken away from Yael, Ruth doesn't have to give back to Naomi the sheva. To which he says, isn't, right, what you're going to say, koch matana is stronger than a mecher, that it's a done deal and Ruth doesn't have any responsibility anymore? Yeah, in fact, it's true. Of course. Now, what's the logic behind this? Let's think about the logic. The logic is that when I'm sorry. I should say, I think I want to explain something. What they're saying is like this. It's really more, 1 second, let me just get it right. Right. When she goes back, when you get a gift, so sometimes you lose out, right? And therefore there's no responsibility here for her to give to. I just want to check one thing because I have something in my head and I want to make sure it's right before I say it. Right. I missed one point. That's what I wanted to say. What we're trying to say is why in a shtar matana does Ruth not, I missed one important thing. Ruth doesn't commit to Naomi when she's giving her a gift that she'll repay her the shevach. Why not? Because if Yael collects, when the Baal Chov comes and collects from Naomi, she actually can't. This is why they were saying, is a matana stronger? A matana is stronger to the extent that when Yael collects the loan from property that was given as a gift, she actually can't take the sheva. So if the land was worth 100 and she was owed 100 and the enhancements got it to 125, she cannot take the whole thing. She can only take 100 worth if it's a gift. And then they're saying, why would a gift, I have to go back because I didn't explain it right. Why would a gift be any stronger than a loan? That doesn't mean, than a sale. You would think a sale would be much stronger than a gift. In other words, again, that a sale would mean that Yael can't collect. Once Naomi purchases it, she can't collect any enhancements Naomi makes. And it's the reverse. Because why? Again, when Yael goes to collect, she can't take the shevach from a gift. And the reason is because a gift, Naomi can never go back to Ruth and say, hey, you gave me a gift, I invested in it, and now she took it away. She's not going to get anything back. It was all a gift. Naomi didn't pay anything for it. So she's never going to get the shevach back. Because she'll never get the shevach back, Yael can't take the shevach from her. But in a sale where Naomi paid fair and square for that land, and Ruth guaranteed the land, so when Yael takes the land away from Naomi, she can take it with all the shevach. And because why? Because Naomi can go back and get it from Ruth, but in a gift she can't demand it, and that's going to be a problem. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Hamaniti Mesea Le'Lamar Shmuel. After bringing all these questions against Shmuel before in the previous sugya, now here we're going to see in this sugya we're going to bring a proof for Shmuel also. So we proved it first from the Rava proved it from the language of a shtar, and now we're going to bring another proof for Shmuel. I'm Rav Nachman. I'm going to bring a braita that I think proves Shmuel, but know that Rav Huna and his friends don't read it in the same way, and for them it wouldn't be any proof whatsoever. Titania. So that was a big introduction. Now let's see. So you sell a field, the Baal Chov, the creditor, takes it away, or a classic case. Kishehu goveh et hakeren min nechasim b'shu'abadin. V'shevach goveh min nechasim b'lechorin. Simple reading of this is, when Naomi goes to then get her money back from Ruth, she gets the keren, the principal of it, the $100 she spent on it, she gets from lien property of Ruth. If Ruth sold land to Shimon, let's say, Ruth doesn't have money on hand, but she had sold property to Shimon. So Naomi can go collect from Shimon, this other guy, right, that Ruth had sold land to. But the shevach, but when she goes to collect the shevach, was that proof? She can collect the shevach. Otherwise, what would we be talking about? When she goes to collect the shevach, if Ruth doesn't have money on hand, she can't collect it from lien property. We keep going back and forth. Every time we talk about someone collecting, is it lokach migazlan? Is it Baal Chov? So they'll say it's a lokach migazlan. Now we know why Shmuel won't read it that way, because Shmuel says lokach migazlan. She can't collect the shevach because it looks like ribit. But Hunan and his friends obviously explain according to Rav and say, oh, this source doesn't teach you anything about a Baal Chov because it's talking about someone who bought stolen property. And then again, it goes against Shmuel and against Shmuel in both places. Or it doesn't at least prove Shmuel here, and in the previous sugya it would go against. Tanya Idach, another bright. Hamocher sadeh michavero. Now this time we're going to bring a difficulty on Shmuel about the Baal Chov being able to collect the shevach. Okay, so again, this means two things really. It means, number one, as compared to the previous case, Naomi can actually collect the shevach back. But why is she collecting the shevach? Because the Baal Chov can collect the shevach. Now, again, this is a bit of a weird thing. The loan was 100, and now all of a sudden she gets 125. So according to this source, we're going to see it's a little trickier. And then it's going to be a problem with Shmuel. Okay, so again, classic. Ruth sold the field to Naomi. Naomi invested, and it went up in value. Babal chovet tarfa, and comes Yael to collect it for this loan that Ruth owes her. Keshehu goveh, when she collects the land, im hashevach yoter al yitzia. If, let's pull up our chart and you'll see. Chart, we'll go through our numbers that I put on the chart. If at the time of the sale it was worth 100, okay, when Naomi bought it, then she invested 50, and it now went up to 175. This sounds like the Mishnah at the end of Bava Kama that we learned. So if the value of it went up more than the hotzaot, so now basically Yael is collecting $175. So on a $100 loan. So let's see what happens. And Naomi paid $100, but also paid $50 more, and ended up this land is worth 25. So who gets what? So notelet hashevach mibal karka. Okay, she goes back to Naomi and gets the 25, the extra 25 she gets from Ruth. V'hayitziyah mibal chov, but her expenses she gets from the person who collected. They benefit from the shevach, but they have to pay. They don't benefit. We thought until now they got 175 and they won out. They now have 75 extra. No, they have to pay back all the investment that Naomi put into it. So 50 goes back to Naomi from Yael, who sees the property. What if she invested 50, but she was a poor investor and the land only went up by 25? So if that's the case, so now all she gets, she can't get any of it from she doesn't need to go to Ruth for any of it because she gets back her $25 investment from the person who now sees this property that's now worth more. They have to give back the 25, the 25 they invested, and she loses the 25 that she invested that she did a poor job investing. She can't demand that from anybody. So now, again, we're going to go back to our classic. Is this a lokach migazlan or is it a Baal Chov? So if you say, Iba lokach migazlan, kasher reisha, well, then the reisha makes no sense because what happened? She gets to go back, Ruth goes back to Naomi and gets 50, she gets 25 from Naomi, the shevach. Well, what does Shmuel say? There is no shevach in that case. It'll look like interest. And if you say, Iba Baal Chov, kasher reisha v'seifa, both don't make sense according to Shmuel about the Baal Chov. What does Shmuel say about a Baal Chov? The Baal Chov gets to keep all the shevach. And here the Baal Chov has to pay back, both in the reisha and the seifa, either the expenses, or if the expenses were more than the enhanced value, then just the enhanced value. But either way, he has to pay expenses. Shmuel never said that. Shmuel says he gets all the shevach. So, Damar Shmuel, Baal Chov goveh ta shevach. So how do we explain this? So we're going to have two possible solutions. Here on the next chart. Ibait ema bilokach migazlan. Maybe it is the first case. And why is there shevach here? Well, the two exceptions that Rav Yosef suggested. That both of those cases we said precludes it from looking like interest, and that avoids the rebeat problem. So it could be it was a case where theoretically there would have been rebeat, but you can get the shevach from the original, the one who stole it, because it doesn't look like interest because you did one of these things. Ibait ema bebal chov velo kasha. Now, if you say it's bal chov, now we're going to differentiate between different shevach. There's shevach hamigia l'ktefaim and kam b'shevach she'eno migia l'ktefaim. What does this mean? Okay, it sounds like a weird thing. It comes to the shoulders. What it means is there's shevach. Okay, let's say that when Yael demanded the field back because she was owed money by Ruth, and she goes to Naomi. Ruth has no money. She goes to Naomi and takes the field. The field was full of produce that was ready to be picked, and Naomi just hadn't gotten around to picking it. So if she takes it on a day when it's full of fruits, then of course Naomi can get that back because that's as if it was detached from the field. What kind of shevach does the Baal Chov get to keep entirely without paying back any expenses? In other words, if it's things that were already ready to be picked, then I shouldn't say she gets the produce, but she gets all of her investment back. But if it's like buds on a tree, or the stuff is just starting to grow from the ground, that's canceled out to the land, and the person who sees the property gets to keep that. Okay, and therefore we differentiate, and that sounds like a great logical differentiation. The problem is, the Gemara is going to say, so according to this, when Shmuel says Baal Chov goveh etach shevach, the Baal Chov gets to keep the enhancements. It's only if it's at an early stage, right? It's not ready to go. They say, but we see with our own eyes. Shmuel in his court allows the Baalei Chov to collect land that's full of produce about to be picked and doesn't make them return it. So how could we possibly explain that? To which they answer, lo kashya. And you might remember, we had this sugya already in Bava Kama, toward the end of Bava Kama. Hadim masik be kashiur ara v'shvacha, hadim lo masik ba ela kashiur ara diave leshivchei u'misalik. It really all depends on how much money the Yael is owed. We keep giving this example of Yael was owed $100, and Ruth sold the field to Naomi for $100, and now the field's worth more, right? $175 or whatever it is. But if that's the case, that she was only owed $100, then she doesn't get the Shevach HaMegiah L'Ktefayim. Okay, if there's produce already ready to go, she has to give that back. But if, let's say she was owed $175, the land was $100, she was owed $175, then she gets to keep all the $175 because she was owed that money. So she gets that's all paying back her loan. So she can keep all of that land, including the 75. She doesn't have to pay anything back. And that's the difference. So when Shmuel collected Shevach HaMegiah L'Ktefayim, that's because that was part of what was owed to the original creditor. To which the Gemara is going to bring up a question that we had last time we saw this, which is, now we want to talk about the case where it was Shevach Shalom Megiah, right? That Shevach HaMegiah L'Ktefayim, but it wasn't the amount owed. So if it was, let's just talk about this. If it was 100, but the loan was for 100, and now there's fruits worth, let's say, 75. So Yael gets to take all of it, and then she reimburses Naomi for the amount she invested, right? She'll get 50 back from Yael because she invested 50, and the 25 extra of the Shevach she'll get back from Ruth. So what happens though? Yael seizes the entire property and just gives her back 50 in cash. So that works if we say that if Naomi had money, she wouldn't be able to push off Yael with money. In other words, when Yael goes to collect from lien property, she gets the land. She doesn't, if Naomi says, I have money to pay you instead, right? What happens first? Yael goes to Ruth and asks her for money. Ruth says, I have no money. She says, okay, you have land? No, I have no land. I have no land. I have no money. So she goes to Naomi. According to one opinion, Naomi can't offer her money instead. Since the land was lien, she gets the land. So if that's the case, then this all makes perfect sense. She'll take the land worth 175. She'll reimburse her the 50 that she's owed. But in cash. But if Naomi can push her off with money, then in this case, now Naomi doesn't have money, but if I had the money, I would kick you out of the entire land, right? I wouldn't give you any of this. You wouldn't be able to kick me out. I would keep my land. I would give you cash. Well, hashta delately, Susan. I don't have money now, but at least havli garba da'ara ba'ara kashir shivcha. I want at least a piece of land, the value of what I'm owed. Give me what I want in land. Don't take away the whole piece of property. Let me have the value that you're going to pay me back in cash. I don't want it in cash. I want it in land. She should be able to do that. And here it says she can't do that. So, right, because she automatically seizes all the property and just gives her in cash. Why would that be? If you hold that she could push her off in money, then theoretically she should be able to keep her land of the value that she's owed. To which they say, it must be a case. If Ruth from the beginning had said to Yael, I'm borrowing money and I'm promising you this exact piece of land that right now is worth 100. So if Naomi invests in that land and it becomes worth more, she still gets that entire piece of land because that entire piece of land was promised to her and she just has to reimburse her in cash. But if it wasn't that, it seems like she would be able, Naomi could claim, I want 20, whatever it was, $50 worth in land and not in cash. Okay, but if it was an apotiki, you couldn't do that. Next machloka between Rav and Shmuel. What if we're back to the same case where Ruth sold Naomi stolen land, but in this case it was different because Naomi knew it was stolen before she bought it. Very interesting. She knew she's buying stolen property and she bought it anyway. So I'm a Rav. So the question is, can she get her money back when the thief seizes it? Because she knew what she was getting into and she knew it was stolen. And you can't buy stolen property. She knew that. So what was she doing giving money for stolen property? So Rav says, Mo yesh lo shebach ein lo. This point, everyone drops a level. She says she can get her money back for the sale, but she cannot get any enhancements she did to the field. The field was never really hers. She can't claim enhancement. Shmuel Amar, afilu maot ein lo. Remember, Shmuel last time didn't think you could get shebach for sure, not here. He says she can't even get back the money for her sale. What is this machloket about? B'mai kamiflage. Mars Rav Sabal Adam Yodea Shakarka ein lo. She knows she's not buying it because she knows it's not hers to buy. So why'd she give her money if she knew it wasn't really a sale? Well, she gave it to her. She really wanted her to watch her money. Naomi wanted someone to protect her money. She didn't have a bank to go to. She didn't have a good mattress to bury it under. So she gave it to Ruth to watch her money. And therefore, when the land gets seized from her, she goes back and says, okay, give me my money now. And she can get it back because it's her money. To which they say, if all she wanted was to give Ruth money to watch, why didn't she just say, Ruth, I want you to watch my money? Well, several lamakabel. She thought that Ruth maybe wouldn't accept it, so she did it in this surreptitious way. Shmuel agrees with this concept that Adam Yodea Shkarka ein lo. Everybody knows this doesn't work. But she was giving it as a gift. That's why now we can't claim the money back in the end, because it was clearly a gift. Now, a gift, you can't say, I want it back. Well, because already it's Ruth's, 100%, fair and square. So why didn't she just say, I'm giving you a gift? Ruth would be embarrassed to get a gift from Naomi. She would say, no, 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 no. So she gave it to her in this way, pretending, I'm buying your land, even though she knew very well she wasn't. So now the Gemara is going to ask, and you might remember this, but wait, they already had this exact same machloket. In what context? To Itmar, it was said, somebody betrothed their sister. Rav Amar, whatever money he gave her, or a ring, or whatever it was, ma'ot chozrim, the money goes back. Shmuel Amar, ma'ot matana. Shmuel says you can't demand the money back from the sister because the brother can't demand the money back because it was a gift. It's hers, fair and square. So it's going to be the exact same thing. Rav Amar, ma'ot chozrim, you give the money back because Adam Yodea ein kiddushin tofsim b'achado. Everybody knows that this is invalid. Doesn't do anything. V'gamar v'natan l'shem pikadon. He gave it to her to watch. Why didn't he just say so? He said he didn't think she was going to accept. Shmuel Amar ma'o matana. Why? Adam Yodea she'en kiddushin tofsim b'achado v'gamar natan l'shem matana. He knew it wasn't going to work. He just was giving her a gift. Again, why didn't he just say that? He didn't think she would take. Now we have to answer tzricha. Why do we need both? Well, because if you had it just in one case, you would say, our case, you would say, why would Naomi give a gift to Ruth? Ruth is a stranger to her, right? People don't give gifts to random people. But maybe if it's his sister, much more likely he would give a gift to his sister than some other person on the street. And for that same logic, if you then gave the case of Kiddushin, you would say maybe Bahach Ka'amar Shmuel. That's why Shmuel says it's a gift, because it's the sister. But maybe in the other case, he'd agree with Rav, Tzricha. That's why you need both cases. Last point for today. Bein l'Rav damar b'pikadon, bein l'Shmuel damar matana, hayara b'may nachit, uperot hechiachil. How was Naomi going into the field, though? If the whole thing was really fictitious, what was Naomi doing on the field? Right? It was stolen property. She knew it was stolen property. How could she make investments? All that. Well, she said, I'll just do what Ruth was doing. Ruth stole it. I'll just do what Ruth was doing. And when they come to collect it, when the owner comes to collect the land, then then the money I gave to Ruth will turn into either I was giving it to her to watch, according to Rav, or it will be a gift, according to Shmuel. So basically, what she's saying is, I'm just doing an extension of what Ruth was doing. So she was using it anyway. She had stolen it. I'll just keep stolen. And then when Yael comes and takes her property back, then the money will be either just watched by Ruth or it will be a gift, and as I wanted anyway. So this is an interesting sugya. What we saw today mainly was really we were focusing on the opinions of Shmuel, although at the end also Rav and Shmuel, trying to bring difficulties to what we saw about Shmuel yesterday, about someone who steals from a thief. There's who buys from a thief. Because it looks like Ribi, we're going to have this problem. We brought some difficulties with him. Then through that, we mentioned this other thing about how Baal Chov can take the shevach, and then obviously Naomi can go and get back the shevach from the original buyer. And then we saw some proofs for that. We raised difficulty against it. And then we went to this third machloket they have. Well, the second one wasn't a machloket, but second machloket between Rav and Shmuel about if the buyer knew it was stolen. And then we have this other machloket entirely about what were you doing giving money? Was it to watch the person watch, or was it a gift? Same sugya appears somewhere else, and why do they appear in both places? That's it for today. Long daf, a bit complicated topics, but I hope that with the review and the fact that we keep going over these ideas, that it's becoming more clear. Wishing everybody a great day.